All right, so let's get into it. So today on the two-man game podcast, we're going to discuss all NBA teams predictions, right? There's only about most teams have 6 or 7 games left in the season. We only have a week and a half left in the regular season, which ends on, I believe it was April 9th. So we have a pretty decent, not decent, we have a pretty good sample size on players and their production this year, as well as teams and where they will roughly finish. So I think this is a good time to do all NBA predictions. So let's start off with the first team. And because I feel like the first team, relatively speaking, is a little bit easier than the second, third team. But David, so where do you want to start on the first team? Like which positions do you want to start with?
Sure, let's start. I'm gonna start with center, and two forwards, and then two guards. That's gonna be the format that I'm gonna go with.
Okay.
So I'll get started with my list. So for starting center, it's tough. It was between Jokic and Embiid, and after thinking about it, I think Jokic would take that number one. We'll take the center spot on the first All NBA team, just because still another year of fantastic play. The Nuggets are doing overall very well, though not recently. Overall, I mean, he's having a phenomenal season, just like the past few seasons. This debate whether or not he should win the MVP again, due to interesting comments made by certain people. But I still think he's having a great season so far. So for me, Jokic will take my center spot. For the two forward spots, I have
Well,
Giannis.
let's keep it at the center like really quick because um I think this decision was actually really hard for me personally. It was made easier because Embiid didn't play yesterday because he was out against Jokic. And because this season, like a lot of the positions, everything is so close. So for me, I think for me it was very, very like even until yesterday, right? Because now, not only did you know Jokic beat the Sixers and Embiid did not play, but now the Nuggets have slowly turned it around a little bit compared to how they've been playing for the first half of March. And Philly has dropped right into the now they're not as close to the Celtics in the third seed as well, because before they were neck and neck in with the second seed with the Celtics. They were like tied for the loss column, but now they're 2 games back, right? So for me, I think it makes it easier to pick Jokic. But having said that, like even with only 6 or 7 games left in season, it can still Embiid can still overtake him if he comes back healthy and if the Sixers finish well and the Nuggets kind of stumble. But point being, I agree with you on Jokic, but for me it was pretty difficult. I mean, if we did this like last week, I would have a much more difficult time choosing. But considering what's happened the last few days, I think I agree with you with that. Jokic is probably my pick at center as well.
And also he's played. I mean, a few. I'm not too big of a difference, but he's also played a few more games as well. I think that should
Yeah, a
be
handful
taken
more
into
games.
consider a handful of games as well. So I think that should be taken into consideration,
Yeah,
as well as team success as well. I mean, both teams are very good this year. Obviously,
yeah,
as you mentioned, earlier, the Sixers are pretty close to the Celtics, but the Nuggets, I believe, are still top of the West. So
yeah. Also, Embiid's second player is far better than any of Jokic's players, right? Jokic has
yeah,
never played with an all-star on his team. Like as good as Jamal Murray has been the last handful of years, he's never been an all-star, right? And Harden,
right.
even though he didn't make the team this year,
You mean
like
John Murray?
Jamal
Jamal
Murray, yeah,
Murray.
sorry,
Okay, you said John Morant.
sorry. So I
I was
meant
like, well,
Jamal
wait, he
Murray.
is an All Star,
So
but he's not a different team.
yeah. My bad. And then for James Harden, like he didn't make the All-Star team, but it's only because he didn't play enough games, but he was averaging 21 and 11. So and also like you can argue that Tyrese Maxey is maybe not as good as Jamal Murray, but pretty damn close, I would say. At least right now. I mean, I feel like Jamal Murray next year, once he's has a full, 2 years to recover from the ACL, he'll probably be back to where he was the prior year. So he'll probably be, a step above Maxi. But just for this year, like, you know, Murray hasn't been like he's looked like 80 to 85% of his usual self, more or less. Like he's a half a step slow on offense and defense. Still a really good player, just like he's not like borderline all-star. Whereas, so I feel like him and Maxey, there's not a lot of airspace between them this season, at least.
Right.
So I feel like Embiid just has more overall talent on his squad compared to like Jokic.
Yeah, that's true, but I would argue the Nuggets have a more balanced team or deeper
Yeah,
team in overall.
they're a
So
better built team.
yeah.
So they built a pretty, to your point, they built their team to have the right role players around Jokic, like whether it's shooters, whether it's 3-and-D wings, right? Whether it's guys who hustle and can defend to a certain extent. So I think they built the team better for Jokic. I just think Embiid has better top end talent, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, Embiid's definitely a lot more athletic.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So who do you have for your two forwards?
so for my two forwards, I have Giannis, and honestly, there's really not much to be said. It's Giannis.
Mhm.
He's just having another fantastic season. And then Jason Tatum because he's having another, also a fantastic season as well as the Celtics playing well, and same with the Bucks with Giannis. So I don't think there's really much debate there unless you think otherwise. Uh,
No debate there. I think of all the decisions for all NBA, this is probably the easiest ones to make.
I don't really think there's a discussion or really debate. I'm like,
No.
these two guys are just hooping.
Yeah. Okay. So who do you have for your two guards?
This was tough, actually, just because it's been a very deep. I mean, even the league in general, there's like a very, there's a huge, a lot of great quality guards, and this might be out of convention because I don't think neither of these guys are on teams that are, I guess, necessarily dominant, but they themselves are statistically having a great season. So my two guards are going to be Steph Curry and Luka Doncic.
Okay.
I think you're probably going to disagree with me.
Okay.
Yeah, for some
So
strange reason, I feel like you're going to disagree with me.
yeah. So I would say if this was like a month ago, Luca would be a surefire first team for me because he has God, what is he averaging, like 32, 8 and 8 or something? Like um something to that degree, right? Because let me just check since we're here. It's 33, 8, 8, 9 and 8. Okay. Um my thing with Luca and what's changed since a month ago is that
Kyrie.
I have a really hard time of putting someone on first team when they are currently not even going to make the play-in team and they're 4 games below 500. Um,
I understand where you're coming from, but the
I have a really
numbers he's
hard time
putting
doing
up,
that.
man, it's just he's averaging.
Yeah, and his numbers are high,
Yeah,
but I feel like the league overall stats is just inflated everywhere,
that's
right?
true.
So yeah, like he's averaging
But
30 points, but so is five, no, 6 other players if you include Curry, right? Because Curry is he hasn't played enough games to be eligible for the scoring title, right?
you're right.
But if eligible, he's averaging 30 after scoring. I think he scored 39 today. His average will be 30. So Dodgers has played really good numbers, but there's just so many players that have inflated um scoring who scoring averages for this season, and he's averaging 8 and 8 again, eight rebounds, 8 assists. But even for this season, there's a good amount of players that are averaging 7, 8 boards and assists as well, right? So I feel like his numbers, while they're amazing, they're a bit inflated as well, right? So for me, I had a hard time with this. So I actually decided to put Shaggy Gilgeous-Alexander for my pick because
It's like, wait, they're not making the playoffs.
So they're
Actually, they're in the playoffs. Sorry, they're in the play-in at the very least. Sorry.
yeah.
Not gonna go.
So right now they're in the play-in, right?
Right.
Um, God, and I made my list yesterday, which doesn't help because yesterday they were above the Mavericks. Now they're tied with the Mavericks. So my case is not as good as yesterday compared to today. But when I made this list, they were a game above the Mavs. And also, I just feel like Shea's team is he's playing with a bunch of
Yeah, it's
rookies,
worse.
a couple of second year players, and they have no big. They don't have a big, like they don't have a legit like big to like play. So they're literally just playing Shea and a bunch of guys who are 20 years old and younger.
True.
Right. True that they drafted well, and a lot of these guys have potential, like um, Giddy and both of the J Dubs.
Mhm. Yeah,
But I just feel like on paper, Shea has a lesser team, and he's doing more with less, in my opinion. Right.
and that's
Um.
fair. I was thinking about putting him as on the first team too, but I there's like other factors to consider as well, in my opinion, just because of like the voters, right? I mean, Shea isn't necessarily like a household name quite yet. Hopefully, it is. I mean, because amongst NBA fans, he also plays for a very small market team, right? So
Mhm.
like your casual fan is gonna know who they are, who he is,
Yeah.
right? So that does I feel like it does play into consideration when it comes to voting, even though it shouldn't. But realistically, I think it is a
Yeah.
factor.
And we're splitting hairs, but Shea has also played more games. Granted, it's only three more games, but like when it's this close, when both teams, when two players are on teams with similar records, their stats are relatively similar. But by the way, Shea plays a lot more defense than Luka does, right? So that's not a
True.
stat that we see. But
Yeah, I
when
have
you
to agree
watch
with
him
you
play,
there.
he plays a lot more D than like Luka, right? And when the scorings are similar, their percentages are similar. Um, you have to look for little things that would kind of sway you one way or the other, right? So for me, I had Shea. Now for my other guard, this was also hard. I looked at Luka, I looked at Steph, and I looked at Jaw. And I was gonna put Jaw, right? Because
Your recent.
I was gonna no. So I was gonna put Jaw yesterday, right? Because he's averaging 27 and pretty decent percentages, 47 field goal percentage, and he's second. His team is second in the West. But the reason why I'm not putting him in the first team is because he's out right now, right?
I thought he played yesterday, and he played the day before.
Says that he is out. He's gonna be out tomorrow.
Oh, out tomorrow. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I thought
So
he was
he's
out from his suspension from his thing. I think he just came back.
yeah. So currently he's out, and then the Grizzlies played relatively well without him as well.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, Steph right now he's played almost as many games as Jaw. So right now Steph is at 51,
One.
50 or 51 right now. And Steph is averaging 30 points on 50, 40, 90.
Yeah.
Right. Um, and so for me, the Warriors have been a mess all season. But for when I watch the Warriors, when when Steph is off the floor, the Warriors are just a mess. And granted, when Steph was missing for those 10 games or so, the Warriors, I believe they were about 500 or 6 and 4 or 500. 8 of those games were at home, and six of those games were against bad teams like the Spurs and the Rockets, right? So those wins are they're a bit of an illusion for lack of a better term, right? So for me, I feel like we see the impact of Steph on his team greater than Jaw. For me personally,
Oh, I agree with you. That's why I
yeah.
picked Steph.
So I would lean Steph, right? Um, if Jaw was still playing, I would probably go with Ja just because there is a delta because Ja has played in 10% of more games than Steph does, and his team is obviously much higher in the standings. But because Steph is across the board, his stats are better across the board. Um, I feel like he has more impact on
Impact.
winning. His team needs him more
His
than Ja's team
impact
does.
is the
Yeah,
biggest thing for me. It's not
yeah,
just stats. It's like impact, overall impact in the team.
yeah.
That's why I picked Steph.
Agreed,
Luka
agreed.
was just pure stats, honestly, because he's a stats machine.
Yeah,
And yeah, I don't know. I still gotta give him credit for what he's
yeah,
done so far, despite like they're not doing so hot
yeah, yeah.
recently.
Okay, so you have Luka, Steph, Giannis, Tatum, and Jokic, and
Yep.
I have the same team as yours, except that instead of Luka, I have Shea.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Fair.
so let's move on to the second team. I'm gonna assume that your center is Embiid.
Embiid. Yep. That's
Okay,
no debate. We
cool.
already discussed it. We just
All right.
discussed about
Okay,
just
so
discussed about that.
what about your forwards? Who do you have for your two forwards?
Okay, so I'm gonna go with Julius Randle
Hmm.
and Lauri Markkanen as my two forwards.
Okay, so I have the same two forwards. Um, bef I mean, for me, the forward spot is nowhere near as deep as the guards. I feel like the guards there's be a lot more debate, but for Julius, it's pretty straightforward for me. Like the Knicks are the fifth in the East. He's averaging 25 and 10. He's played every single game so far. There's only like a handful of star level players or borderline star level players that's played every single game so
Mhm.
far.
Yeah, I agree.
So for me that matters. Um, so I that's why I had Randall for Lauri. This was tough because there's so many forwards that you can go with here.
Yeah,
And
true.
honestly, like for me, all of the forwards that are in his same that have similar stats or are putting up massive numbers,
Hmm.
most of them have only played like under 50 games. Like
Yeah,
LeBron, Durant, so on and so forth.
yeah.
Laurie has played 65
It's
games
five.
and counting. He's averaging 26 and 9, and he's flirting with 50, 40, and 90 as well. Like he's only a couple of decimals away from 40% from 3 point, and he's a couple of points away from 90 free throws. So for me, like that's uber efficient, right?
Yeah.
And his team is and and he's doing that despite the Jazz just trading away players left and right, right? They're trying to tank intentionally. They're playing like undrafted guys in the second unit. Like they're trying hard now to just tank, right? But he's still playing well, and his team was playing well in the beginning of the season, right? So
Right. When
for
team was
me,
together.
he's played 16, 17 games more than other star players, even though he's not as good as those players. So for me, that's why for me I had Marketing as my second forward as well.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what else to say. Obviously, I picked him. He's having a fantastic season. No one would have thought he's this good. Honestly,
Mm.
I was surprised by how well he improved coming to Utah. So that trade with with the Cavs turned out to be a lot better than
Dude,
initially hoped.
his points
Yeah,
per game like grew over 10.
yeah.
It's crazy.
He's
And he
in
got
my
more efficient. He got more efficient playing with worse players, which is crazy.
exactly, and yeah. In addition to that, like I don't know. I guess he has a lot more. I guess even minutes played, it's roughly similar. Like versus last year, I just think he's more of the focal point
Yeah.
of this team, and so now that he has a lot more opportunity to be the quote unquote the guy, he's proven that hey, this is
Yeah.
the guy that the Bulls thought he would be when they
Yeah.
originally drafted him.
Like when you're the top guy on the scouting report for opposing teams and you're still able to do 50, 40, 90 almost, that's insane. Right. It's different if you are a 50, 40, 90 guy and you're the second or third option on your team. Because Brogdon has done that before when he was playing with like Giannis. Kyrie has done that when he was playing with Durant, right? That's different because you're not the primary focus of the scouting report. But when you are the number one name on a scouting report against opposing teams, and you can still score that efficiently. That's massively impressive, right? And your team is doing everything it can to like lose, but you're still in the play-in right now, despite your team just being dismantled, right? So I give credit to that.
And he's the in my opinion, he's gonna be the most he should be
Yeah,
the most improved player.
yeah. Okay, what about for your guards? Who do you have for your two guards?
Ooh, tough one. This was a tough one. So my guards, I have Gilgeous-Alexander. So a guy that was I don't think there needs anything else needs to be said. He's having a phenomenal season. He's playing extremely well, averaging over 30 points a game with a bad team that's in the play-in somehow. Because coming into the season, we all thought they were going to be a bad team, but
Mm-hmm.
they're actually pretty good because Shea essentially evolved from a very good player to an all-star, budding superstar level player, actually, in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of like above an all-star if you think about it. Like he just plays for a small market, and the team isn't as well known because he doesn't really play with well-known like players that I think a casual fan would know. So he doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
get that recognition. But if you actually watch him play, right, he plays well in all facets of the game.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like, so, it was hard for me to not pick him in the first team, but I think realistically having that name power does matter,
Mm-hmm.
especially when stats are relatively close. Because even now, right, even though the Mavericks are currently not in the play-in, they still have a chance to make the play-in, and I don't want to necessarily rule them out yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, like, in my opinion, SGA and Luka are kind of like neck and neck,
Okay.
or the first, in my opinion, obviously, because you think differently.
Yeah. And
So
who do you have for your second guard spot?
my second guard spot. Um, it's going to be a very similar situation on why I picked Luka, but this is going to be kind of something that I don't think people might be expecting. But I actually have Damian Lillard
Yeah.
as my second guard because of just the crazy numbers he's put up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, God.
I mean,
The-
it's just insane.
it's
But
so hard. Yeah.
it's just now I know they just shut him down this for the rest of the season because they're just the Blazers are just essentially giving up. But
Yeah. So I had a okay, full context, both my guards are different. Just to kind of discuss your Dame part, kind of the same thing that I had with Luca was it's and to be fair, despite their stats, I feel like Dame has played better than Luca. Right. It's just that his team was not built well. And Luca's team was not built well either. But for me, um, Dame's I believe right now the Blazers are 11 games under 500, and by the time they finish the season, it's probably be closer to 15 games under 500. And Dame, to your point, has already been shut down, so he's only going to play like 50, I think 56
yeah,
games,
it's just the stats are kind of hard for me
58
to
games.
ignore. Otherwise,
Yeah,
I was thinking about him or like honestly Donovan Mitchell probably going
yeah,
to be a more realistic pick because he's available and the Cavs are good.
yeah.
So
So I'm gonna go back to to
yeah,
my other point was I just feel like scoring is just really inflated this season. So I'm trying, not that I'm ignoring the scoring stats that these guys are putting up. I'm trying to temper it to an extent, knowing that it's an abnormal season for scoring, right? So
that's true.
having said that, Dame is having his best season. Agreed there. So for me, I put Jaw here because I mean Jaw and Steph were kind of neck and neck for me for first team. I put Jaw here just because his team two. I think I already discussed it in the previous segment, but Jaw is the best player on the second best team in the West. Is scoring at 27 clip, pretty decent.
Mhm.
If he wasn't suspended, he probably would be first team easily, I think.
I think the
Um,
suspension really hurt
yeah,
a lot. Like that's the thing. I was thinking about Jaw too, but I was like, I don't think the voters will think very highly of him
mm-hmm.
because of that suspension and what it was for. Even though, yeah, I don't know. I agree with you from a basketball standpoint, but like I think that incident definitely affected how he's perceived,
Yeah,
even by voters, right? Which is which is why I think I don't know. He might get just left out in general, but who
Yeah,
knows? He doesn't
it's
deserve to be, but it's just the way that
yeah,
people
it's
might.
definitely tough. It's definitely tough, but I'm trying to just my same rationale for giving all NBA or for projecting all NBA to certain players. I try to be as fair as possible and not taking off the court stuff as much because it's one thing if your off the court stuff affects winning or losing,
Right.
right? Like with the whole Kyrie thing, like
Yeah.
last year and like this year, but for Jaw, for me, I didn't personally penalize him for it, and as even though the West has been pretty terrible, the only three teams in the West that's been consistent all year is the Nuggets, the Grizzlies, and the Kings. So I feel like the Grizzlies deserve an All NBA player, right? If you have a top four, top five record in the league,
Mhm.
you deserve an All NBA player, in my opinion, right? So
Just that's
this is where
fair. I
I like
mean,
slot Jaw.
yeah, I totally that
Okay,
totally agreed there.
so the next guard spot for me was so difficult. So there are way too many amazing guards in this league. Like the amount of depth of this league for guards is crazy, right? Um, and I went back and forth with to your point, Luka, Dame. I think you mentioned Mitchell. But I actually went with De'Aaron Fox.
I can see why.
For a few reasons. One, he's played a ton of games, 67 games. That's more than any of the other players, any of the other guards that we've discussed. Steph, Shea, Luka, Dame, Ja, Shea. He's played more games than all those players. He's his team is a second. His team is currently third in the West, and he has the most clutch points this season. I know that a lot of folks have spoken about this already, but he has the most clutch points this season, which is basically the most amount of points scored in the last 2 minutes, right? Um, he's uber efficient at 52% shooting, right? And so for me, um, just all those factors, I had De'Aaron Fox here. I mean, I flirted with Luka, with Dame, Donovan, as I mentioned, and a handful of other players, but for me, I I just feel like when I watch the Kings kind of bred the Kings are amazing on offense because of Sabonis, yes, but Fox is kind of what makes them go, especially when they're in the open court,
Yeah, he does push. He pushes the offense.
right?
He
And
pushes the pace.
yeah, so for me, again, this is like splitting hairs. I could change my mind like next week because it's so close between all these guards.
Yeah,
But then for me, I had the De'Aaron Fox.
fair. 100% reasonable there.
Yeah, because for me, like when I look at De'Aaron Fox and Mitchell, for just to compare, two players, their stats are somewhat similar. But in my opinion, like their teams, I feel like Mitchell has a slightly better team overall, at least
Yeah,
more top end talent. But the Kings have a better record, and again, this is so slim, but Fox
the
has
chemistry
played
too.
a handful more games as well. So again,
Gotcha.
it's splitting hairs, right? So for me, I had Fox. Okay, so just to sum up, we both had Randall, Markkanen, and Embiid for our front
Yep.
court, and you had Dame and Shea for your back court, and I had Jaw and Fox.
I'm kind of regretting picking Dame, but honestly, his stats are just kind of they're just
No, man,
bonkers, man. They're just
I don't blame
crazy.
you,
Like
man.
I
I don't
normally
blame you.
wouldn't. I mean, like he's. I mean, obviously the team isn't as good as the others, but like the guy just
if you
he
were
gives.
to
It's
if you
tough.
were to do the all NBA teams like halfway through at the midpoint way of the season, it would probably be Luca and Dame for first team
It's
for
tough.
the guard
Well, because
spot.
also like as I mentioned earlier, I just think the name recognition and because Dame has been a perennial like all star, like budding superstar at times, like type
Mm-hmm.
of player, and so I think that's going to come into consideration.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be realistic, not necessarily like I'm just trying to be more realistic in what the voters would think or how the voters would think
That's
versus
fair.
my own kind of opinion. Though I don't know, I it's hard to overlook those type of numbers. I mean, even though they
Yeah.
are inflated, it's still like the guy's almost averaging 33 points a game.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, I totally get it, man.
which is
I
still
totally get
crazy,
it.
I mean, the only reason why they're shutting him down is because the team is not playing well.
Yeah.
That's not
No,
his
I totally
fault.
get it. I
Yeah.
totally get it. Okay, so let's move on to the third team. So who do you have as your center? I mean, I feel like you have a few
Yeah, my
options
center
here.
is gonna be Sabonis.
Okay.
Because
I figured.
yeah, he's a he helps the Kings operate the way they do with obviously with Fox pushing the pace. But some of Sabonis's playmaking and his scoring in the paint has been tremendous. Also his rebounding too. Grabbing those extra offensive boards has been extremely helpful for the Kings. He can draw double teams. You know, he's a phenomenal passer. So he can pass it to the wide variety of different shooters the Kings have this season. So um, yeah, I don't know. I think Sabonis plays a huge role and one of the best teams in the NBA, which is
Yep.
crazy to believe the Sacramento Kings are one of them. But yeah,
Yep. I have no debates
easy,
there. He's
easy pick for
yeah,
me
I have
there.
no I have no arguments there. Like he's literally putting up like baby Jokic numbers right now.
To
Right.
some degree, he's essentially baby Jokic in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah,
Right. And the Kings are third. So for me, I would agree. I think the center spot is not as deep as the guards. So I
yeah.
think
I
I
mean,
think this is relatively easier. There are like a handful of other centers that are like you can look at,
yeah, like
but
AD, Bam, or Rudy, I guess. But I think
yeah,
AD or Bam would probably be closer in my opinion. But
yeah,
again, like they don't have the Sabonis is on a better team
yeah,
that's playing much better than the Lakers. I
yep,
think the Kings are playing much better than the Lakers and the Heat. So
yep.
that's the reason.
And Sabonis is on track to play 80 games this season as well. So
That's
he's
a
played a
big
ton of
factor as
games.
well.
Yeah. Okay. Who do you have for your two forwards?
Um, this is a yeah, my forwards are tough.
Forwards is really tough
It's
for
also
their
yeah.
team.
It's but now that we're on third team, so one of them I know you're gonna 100% disagree with, but I do think he's gonna get voted in because of namesake. Even though statistically he's having a great season, it's gonna be LeBron.
Hmm.
Even though like he's only played 48 games so far this season, like he's still averaging almost 30 points a game.
Yeah.
8.4 rebounds, practically 7 assists a game. When he does play, he has huge impact on the Lakers. He's the most accomplished active player in the league today. I just don't see the voters leaving him out.
Hmm.
It's just hard for me to believe that they're going to leave out LeBron
Yep. Okay.
because there's other players that, in my opinion, are more deserving for like first team and second team, but they're gonna have to have him somewhere in the mix. Is pretty much my logic around
Yep.
that. I
Okay.
don't necessarily think he may or may not deserve it. He is my favorite player, but I don't know. I think the voters will end up going that direction. And then for my dude, this forward spot is really tough actually for me to pick just because there's like a lot of good forwards in this in the
Hmm.
league as well, especially in a was it all team third team. It's tough. Um, so my pick here is going to be I'm still kind of like debating internally who should this be, to be honest. I have like three players in mind, and none of them really has played too many games, except unless I go with one of them. Yeah, I'm gonna go with actually PG with
PG.
PG just because before he got injured, he was essentially keeping the Clippers afloat because I believe Kawhi was out early as well.
So he's played the majority of his games at guard, but you're
Yeah,
gonna slot him in
like
as a forward.
oh right, yeah, I guess that's true too. I guess I'll go with Kawhi then. Though he's not having his best season either. So because yeah, I don't know. Or
Yeah,
There's a
because
lot of there's
for PG, he's played 35 games as a guard and 21 as a forward, at least when he starts.
I mean, I don't really know who else I put. I guess I'd
Okay,
put Kawhi
so
Leonard. I mean,
so let me go first then. For this. So for me, I put Jaylen Brown as my forward
but
just
he's a guard,
because
isn't
he is a guard,
he?
but he's played more games at a forward than guard. He's played 39 games as a forward and 24 as a guard.
I was
Because
think I was thinking Jaylen Brown too, but I think he's
you know,
more of a guard.
he
Yeah.
is so that's the thing where like this all NBA stuff is position based, which is semi dumb. But the Celtics, for the most part, this season, they've started Smart and Derek White at the guards, and then had Brown and Tatum at the forwards. That's also why Derek White is not eligible to be a six man of the year candidate because he started too many games. Right.
Okay,
So
that's
so
true.
the Celtics by default has started Brown at forward a lot just because Robert Williams has been out a lot. So they kind of forced to start Jalen at guard a lot. So for me, this is, I mean, maybe this is a cop out, but literally, like what's on paper is he's been at forward a lot more. He's been at guard this season. So for me, I put him at forward. So the second forward was like kind of stupidly difficult. I thought about LeBron definitely. Um, I even looked at Siakam because he's
Playing
playing
well.
really well, but I
Yeah.
mean the Raptors has been a mess. Um, I mean, I looked at Kawhi for like a second, but so for me, I actually I'm actually gonna go with Jimmy Butler. Now his stats are not as good as LeBron's, but he's played many more games, and his team is tied for sixth place right now in the East, right?
True. Yeah.
And assuming that you view AD and Bam, I mean, so I think AD now is still better player than Bam, but the rest of the Heat's roster is not great, putting it kindly, right? So Butler is doing more with less. Um, and for me, he's also playing much better defense than most players as well.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if he's gonna make an all defensive team. I don't think he will, but he's at least in the discussion for me. Right.
Yeah.
So for me, if LeBron played like, I don't know, six, seven more games, I think LeBron would be easy picker here. But for me, because the Heat are so far above the Lakers in terms of wins and losses,
True.
because Butler has been more consistent on the defensive end, for me, that's why I chose Butler. But I mean, if you asked me this question like a month ago, LeBron would have been an easy pick. But for me, I went with Butler.
That's a fair pick. Yeah, I was debating Butler and or Brown. Now that, but I wasn't sure if Brown was was a guard or like a forward. But if he counts as a forward, then I would have taken
Okay.
Jaylen Brown to be because Celtics are one of the best teams in the league. He's having a great season.
Mhm.
Yeah, Celtics are doing better than the Heat. I do understand your argument with Jimmy. He's also having a good season. Not his best season, but a solid season. The Heat are still in the playoffs, so that's kind of my rationale for that.
Yeah,
So
I also
so
flirted with Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. And the
I
only
don't think
reason
his numbers
why
were
like
there.
and the only reason why I didn't is because like for all NBA player, his stats have his stats could be better. Like
Yeah,
like
I think
like like literally there are players on all NBA lists right now that we just named that literally averages twice as many rebounds as he does, right? And
right.
then he's only playing 28 minutes as well, right? So for me, like he's played an okay amount of games at 57, but for me, his stat, God, like I feel like he hasn't done enough to be an all NBA player, but he's also someone I flirted with as well. And he's also the second guy on his team, whereas Jimmy and LeBron are the first guys on his team. I mean, just to be quite frank about it.
Sure.
So yeah, that's another guy that I flirted with before picking Jimmy.
Yeah. I think for my other forward in that case, I'm going to go with Jaylen Brown.
Okay.
Like, because
Yeah.
I wasn't sure, but I was like, I think Jaylen Brown, because that's the thing, as you mentioned earlier, the position is kind of tough because some guys are kind of built, they can play either the three or the two, right?
Mhm.
Depending on the lineup. So I
Yeah.
guess if you count Jaylen Brown as a forward, then I guess I'm going to go with Jaylen Brown in that case.
I think folks will vote him as a forward just because I mean this is something that folks kind of think about when they vote these things is that if he makes All NBA, he's eligible for the Supermax as well.
I guess
So that to an extent influences folks. So
yeah, because I see ESPN list him as a shooting guard, but
yeah,
I guess we're gonna see how that goes. But I think he deserves a spot somewhere on an All NBA team. He's
yeah,
definitely well deserving.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, like I wouldn't have picked him if like he started the majority of his games as guard. But again, Derek White has played amazing for being the sixth best player on his team, but he's not eligible to be the sixth man because he's been forced to start so many games. Like he doesn't even close out fourth quarters like Derek White,
Oh, yeah,
which is
yeah.
crazy because he's playing really well and he starts. But that's another conversation. But okay, who do you have for your last two guard spots?
So I have John Morant. He's having fantastic season. I just think he got bumped down due to the suspension.
Mm-hmm.
But statistically, I believe you mentioned he's averaging around like 27 points a game.
Yep.
Uh, I guess I don't know how many rebounds he has because I know him primarily as a scorer, so I think that's his bread and butter. But I'm just gonna double check. Yeah, so he's eight assists a game, eight
Yep.
slightly above 8 assists a game, almost 6 rebounds a game. So he's having overall a really great year. I just think that the recent incident will affect his I guess his All NBA status. But the Grizzlies are the second seed in the West, I believe, and he's played well when he's on the floor. I
Yeah.
don't think there's really anything else you can really say. And then De'Aaron Fox, he is vital to the Kings' success this season,
Mm-hmm.
especially pushing the pace. He's having one of the best seasons for himself as well. So ultimately, maybe the Kings made a right decision to some degree, trading Halliburton for Sabonis essentially. So at least for now, it's more of a short term type of decision. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So for me, my two guards, and before I even tell my two guards, here are the guards that I haven't even picked yet. So um
It was tough.
Dame, Luka, Booker, Holiday, James Harden, Tyrese, Mitchell. So for me, I went with Mitchell. It's my first guard
Fair.
because the Cavs has been fourth, they're fourth East, and he's been pretty consistent year round, right? I think he's averaging like 27, 5 and 5, more or less. Yeah, so 27, 4.5, and four and a half. Pretty good efficiency. His team has been pretty. He's the number one guy on this team as well. And he's been fairly consistent. He's played 64 games, so he kind of meets all of the criteria for all NBA, being the number one guy on your team, top four C, played a good amount of games, relatively efficient, so on and so forth. Okay, my second guard. Okay, so God, so leaving so many guards out like Harden, Tyrese, and Booker, and so on and so forth because of not enough games played, or the team isn't as good, or for whatever reason. I really flirted with going with Drew Holiday just because the Bucks are first in the East, and he's been their most consistent player behind Giannis on both ends. But for me, I went with Luka just because, even though to your point, scoring is inflated, it's just too hard to ignore like 33, like 9-8 or 8 and 9. It's just too hard to ignore. Despite his team not being that good, like it's just too difficult to ignore those numbers. Um, Holiday would definitely make the All NBA defensive team, and I really wanted to put him on an All NBA team, but I just feel like it's a little sacrilegious to leave Luka off when his team is still relatively in the playoff hunt. Insane numbers, pretty decent amount of games played. So went with Luka for my second card spot. But I mean, it was pulling hairs, right? Like
Yeah,
Booker is playing amazing, just not enough games played.
not enough
Harden's
games played.
played.
Yeah.
He's averaging 21-11. Tyrese is averaging 20 and 10. So it was, and Dame averaging what 32 points too. So it was really difficult to be quite frank. But ultimately went with Luka and Mitchell.
Yeah, fair. I mean, there's some notable names we left out as well. I altogether like KD. He just hasn't played enough games, but it's kind of crazy to think like Durant doesn't make any of these lists. I mean, any of our lists.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I think if PG did not get hurt, he probably would have made one of the guard spots as
I think
well.
that. Well, I mean, I agree. I totally agree. He's having.
Yeah.
I mean, statistically not as great of a season, but he also has a lot of good teammates as well, which
He's
may
been the
help
most
hurt his stats.
consistent Clipper.
Yeah, for
He's been the
sure.
most consistent Clipper. Yeah. Um, yeah, man. Oh gosh, this was mind numbing. Um, but okay. So I'm just gonna flash the final results like really quick in terms of what we chose as our all NBA teams. But okay, so any closing thoughts before we sign off? I mean, we have a week and a half at most of the season yet. Is there anything you want to discuss prior to us signing off?
I think that's it for me tonight. So, I mean, there's a lot of exciting basketball left to be played, especially the Western Conference. We still don't know who's going to be in the play-in, so it's
Who do you
still.
who do you want to who do you want to play in the play-in? Like which teams do you want to play to in the play-in? Like for me, for me personally, like I would love to see the Lakers against the Pelicans because the Pelicans has the Lakers pick.
Oh yeah, there's that too. Yeah, from the AD trade.
So for me, that would be intriguing. That's me like personally, but yeah.
I am kind of indifferent to be honest with you. I mean, they're all kind of. I'm actually surprised the Timberwolves are playing as well as they are actually.
Mhm.
So, they definitely deserve. I feel like I picked them to get knocked off in previous videos, but I don't know. They're playing really well. In fact, they've won four straight. So, I guess they're gonna be in the plan for sure.
Yeah, I will say that they're playing
They've
well,
got it
but
together.
tomorrow they're playing the Suns and the Rams coming back tomorrow. So that's one. They're playing the Lakers after that with LeBron back. And then they basically have a cakewalk afterwards, right? They have Portland with no Dame, they have Brooklyn, they have San Antonio, and they have New Orleans without Zion. So um they have a real chance of going 4-2 the rest of the way.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
see them like I don't see them not making the plan.
yeah. It's just a matter of are they gonna make the play-in or if they're gonna make the playoffs, right? Because
Yeah,
like the Warriors and the Clippers, they both basically need to win most, if not the rest of their games. Um, for the Warriors, they only have 5 games left, and they play at Denver and at Sacramento. So the Warriors might go 5-2, but I mean, I think they might go 4-1. I feel like I'm never mind. I think that they're gonna go 3-2 because
it's
three,
crunch time. We'll see how well they play this
yeah,
against the top teams. So
yeah.
yeah, tough to. I mean, they just
Uh,
beat the Clippers, which helped them. Oh wait, sorry, not the Clippers, the Pelicans. So I mean, the
yeah,
pushes them a bit
yeah,
further because I mean, realistically, like the, a lot of the teams in the play-in. Actually, I don't know. Like, being realistic, the T Wolves and the Pelicans technically still have a chance to make the eights. Fifth, like I guess 4 to 8, in my opinion, are kind of up for grabs.
yeah. I think the Warriors could have locked in a top 6 seed if they beat the Wolves the other day. That loss basically opens them up to finish anywhere from 5 to 10. because of that loss. Because now they don't have the tiebreaker against the Wolves either, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
but yeah, man, we'll see. I think it'll be exciting regardless. Cool, man. All right. I think that's it for the two man game podcast, and then we'll see you next time.
I know.